Work today, win tomorrow. What if I told you that the sweat you put in today is the seed of your victory tomorrow? Every struggle you're facing right now isn't punishment, it's preparation. The real question is, are you ready to fight today so that tomorrow bends to your dreams? The beginning of the journey. In a small coastal town in Victoria called Warrnambool, a young bloke named Ethan carried a dream that never seemed to burn out. His dad was a fisherman, his mum worked double shifts at a nursing home, and to most people, Ethan was just another ordinary kid who'd probably never stand out. But deep down, he carried a fire to make something of himself. Growing up, Ethan heard the same line from his father every morning before sunrise. "Work today, son, and tomorrow will thank you." At first, Ethan thought it was just something his old man said to drag him out of bed. But as the years went by, those words turned into the heartbeat of his life. Struggles in the beginning. Ethan wasn't the brightest in school, and he wasn't the quickest on the footy field either. But what he lacked in talent, he made up for with persistence. While others gave up halfway, Ethan pushed on. He studied an extra hour. He ran one more drill. He took one more shift. His mates sometimes laughed at him, calling him a tryhard. But Ethan didn't care. He could see something they couldn't, a vision bigger than himself. Still, the road wasn't easy. Some nights, exhaustion pinned him down. Some mornings, he'd ask himself, "Why am I doing this? Why not just relax like everyone else?" But then he'd hear his father's words echoing in his head, and with tired eyes but a determined heart, he'd whisper, "Because tomorrow will thank me." The defining moment. In his late teens, Ethan picked up a job on a construction site. It wasn't glamorous. While his mates were out partying and living it up, Ethan was hauling bricks under the hot Aussie sun. One of the older workers noticed his determination and asked, "Mate, why push yourself so hard? You're young. Go have a bit of fun." Ethan just smiled, sweat dripping down his face, and replied, "Because I know tomorrow will be mine if I earn it today." That moment never left him. It was the day Ethan realized that life doesn't reward laziness, it rewards consistency. Bigger dreams. But Ethan wanted more than just being a worker. He dreamed of starting his own business, something that would not only change his life, but also honor his parents' sacrifices. He had no money, no connections, but he had two priceless things: discipline and patience. Every dollar he earned on site, he saved. Every night after work, he read books on business and self-growth. Every weekend, he joined community events, learning how people thought and worked. Bit by bit, Ethan began to see that success isn't built in a single day. It's built brick by brick, invisible bricks of hard work that most people are too impatient to lay. When the world says no. Ethan's life was never a smooth ride. Success rarely comes without storms, and his journey was no different. By the time he turned 21, Ethan had scraped together a small bit of savings from his construction job. It wasn't much, but to him it felt like a treasure chest. With his eyes full of dreams, he decided to take the leap, launching a small online store selling eco-friendly products. First failure. Ethan poured every cent into the business. He built a simple website, found suppliers, and did his best to advertise. For a while, it looked promising. A few orders trickled in, one, then another, and Ethan thought he was finally on his way. But reality soon hit. Sales dried up. Shipping delays ruined customer trust. Competition was brutal. Within 6 months, his savings were gone. One night, sitting in his tiny rented room, Ethan stared at his empty bank account. His chest tightened. His mind whispered, "Maybe you're not cut out for this. Maybe they were right. You're just an ordinary bloke." Tears filled his eyes. For the first time, he felt like quitting. The father's words returned. The next morning, Ethan went to see his parents. His dad noticed the sadness written all over his face and asked what was wrong. Ethan opened up about the failed business, the lost savings, the broken spirit. His father placed a rough, calloused hand on his shoulder and said quietly, "Son, you planted a seed but expected it to grow overnight. That's not how life works. Work today and tomorrow will thank you. Failure isn't the end. It's just the soil teaching you how to plant better next time." Those words cut deep. Ethan realized something powerful. Failure isn't a wall, it's a lesson. The storms keep coming. With fresh determination, Ethan went back to construction work to rebuild his savings. This time, though, he worked with sharper vision. Still, life wasn't done testing him. His best mate, the same one who mocked his ambition, landed a stable job and bought a car. Meanwhile, Ethan was still catching buses and living off 2-minute noodles. Relatives questioned him, "Why don't you just get a safe job? Stop chasing impossible dreams." Everywhere he turned, the world seemed to say no. But Ethan kept hearing his father's words, "Tomorrow will thank you." The breaking point. One day, after a brutal 12-hour construction shift under the burning Aussie sun, Ethan's body felt shattered. His hands were blistered, his back screamed in pain, and his wallet was still nearly empty. That night, he sat alone by the beach. The waves crashed hard against the rocks, mirroring the storm inside him. For a moment, he considered giving up completely, settling for an average, safe life like everyone else. But as he stared at the endless horizon, he whispered to himself, "If I stop now, what was all this pain for? If I give up today, tomorrow will never forgive me." With clenched fists and burning resolve, he made a choice. "No matter how many times I fail, I will rise again." A new seed. This time, Ethan didn't dive blindly into another business. Instead, he invested in himself. He began learning digital marketing, finance, and leadership. On bus rides, he tuned into podcasts. At night, he read biographies of Aussies who had built businesses from nothing. And slowly, he realized something profound. The greatest investment isn't in products, it's in yourself. That mindset shift became a turning point. Ethan was no longer just a worker. He was quietly, steadily transforming into a leader. Small wins, big hope. Ethan's failures had humbled him, but they had also sharpened him. He no longer rushed headfirst into things. Instead, he approached life with patience, like a craftsman carefully shaping timber. Every morning before sunrise, he was on the construction site. But every evening, after dinner, he devoted 2 to 3 hours to studying. His mates would laugh and say, "Mate, you're wasting your nights. Come grab a pint with us." But Ethan would just smile and reply, "I'm building my tomorrow." The learning phase. He threw himself into online courses on digital marketing, e-commerce, and leadership. He didn't own a flash laptop, just an old second-hand one with cracked edges. The screen flickered sometimes, but Ethan didn't care. While others scrolled through social media, Ethan was learning how ads worked, how businesses scaled, and how great leaders inspired their teams. This was his silent season. Nobody saw his effort. Nobody applauded. But Ethan knew the truth. Seeds grow in silence before they break through the soil. The first breakthrough. One day, while freelancing online to make some extra cash, Ethan landed his first real opportunity. A small cafe in Melbourne wanted someone to manage their social media. Ethan worked like a machine, snapping photos of food, designing posts, running ads. Within 3 months, the cafe's online presence had doubled, and sales noticeably lifted. The owner shook his hand firmly and said, "Mate, you've got something special. Keep at it." For Ethan, this wasn't just a job. It was proof. Proof that his skills mattered. Proof that the grind was paying off. Momentum builds, word spread quickly. Soon, a local gym asked Ethan to handle their promotions. Then a clothing store reached out. His evenings transformed into strategy sessions, campaign launches, and client meetings. For the first time, Ethan wasn't just dreaming, he was building. And with every small win, his confidence grew stronger. But he didn't let success get to his head. He reminded himself daily, "Work today, and tomorrow will thank you. Don't rush. Stay humble." Balancing struggles. The road was still far from easy. Ethan was juggling 2 worlds, construction during the day, business at night. His body was exhausted, but his spirit was energized. Some days clients were demanding, ads failed, or his old laptop crashed mid-project. But unlike before, Ethan didn't crumble. Failure had already taught him resilience. Now, he treated every setback as another chance to grow tougher. Recognition comes at 24. Ethan finally stepped away from construction. He had built a small but steady digital marketing agency. It wasn't massive, but it was his. People who once mocked him now said, "You were right, mate. You worked harder than all of us." Ethan didn't answer with pride. He simply smiled, knowing his tomorrow had begun to thank him. Quiet gratitude. One evening, after signing his biggest client yet, Ethan took his parents out for dinner at a seaside restaurant. His mom teared up as she looked at the menu, realizing for the first time they could order anything they wanted without worrying about the price. Ethan glanced at his father, who gave him a proud nod. No words were needed. In that silence, Ethan felt it. The promise fulfilled. His father's saying had carried him this far, the weight of success. By the age of 26, Ethan's digital marketing agency had grown from a one-man hustle into a small team of 6. He rented a modest office in Melbourne. Second-hand desks, buzzing computers, and a whiteboard covered with scribbles of campaigns, deadlines, and motivational quotes. On the wall, in bold letters, he had written, "Work today, tomorrow will thank you." It wasn't just his mantra anymore. It had become the culture of his team. The new pressure. But with success came new pressure. Managing a handful of clients as a freelancer was one thing. Running a full company was another. Ethan was no longer just responsible for himself. Now he carried the weight of his employees, their salaries, their futures, and their trust in him as a leader. Suddenly, a late payment from a client didn't just sting him, it threatened his team's livelihoods. A failed campaign wasn't just a dent to his ego, it could cost them contracts worth thousands. The weight on his shoulders grew heavier with every passing month. Competitors arrive. As Ethan's agency gained visibility, bigger firms began circling. Established agencies with massive budgets started targeting his clients. Some undercut his prices. Others whispered doubts. Why trust a small agency when you can hire the big players? Within weeks, Ethan lost 2 major contracts. The office mood dipped. His team looked at him nervously as if asking, "What now, boss?" For the first time since his rise, fear clawed at Ethan. What if everything I've built falls apart? Doubts and darkness. The pressure mounted. Ethan worked longer hours than ever before, sometimes crashing at the office on the couch. He skipped meals, neglected exercise, and ran on endless cups of coffee. At night, doubts crept in. Maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I was just lucky, and it's all slipping away. Memories of his first failed business resurfaced. The emptiness, the despair. Only this time, it was worse, because now other people's lives depended on him. A wake-up call. One evening, after a particularly crushing day, Ethan went to visit his father. They sat quietly on the porch, watching the sun sink into the horizon. Sensing the storm in his son's heart, his father spoke calmly. "Son, do you remember what I told you years ago? Work today, and tomorrow will thank you. But don't forget, tomorrow doesn't just mean money. It means health, it means peace, it means balance. If you destroy yourself chasing success, tomorrow won't thank you. It'll curse you." Those words hit harder than any failure ever had. Ethan realized he'd been chasing growth at the cost of his health and happiness. The turning point. The very next day, Ethan gathered his team. This time, instead of hiding his struggles, he spoke with raw honesty. "Look, mates, we're up against bigger players and the pressure's real, but we're not here to be the cheapest or the biggest. We're here to be the most dedicated. We'll outwork, outlearn, and outcare anyone out there. And I promise you this, if we keep pushing today, tomorrow will thank us all." His honesty lit a fire in the room. For the first time, his team wasn't just following a boss, they were following a leader, rising stronger. Ethan reorganized the agency from the ground up. He delegated instead of trying to do everything himself. He invested in training, turning his staff into stronger marketers than competitors expected. Rather than chasing every deal, he focused on building genuine relationships with clients. Slowly, the tide shifted. Clients began to notice the personal touch. Campaigns started hitting their mark again. The agency didn't become the biggest, but it became known as the most reliable. Beyond borders. By the time Ethan turned 30, his agency had grown from a modest Melbourne startup into one of the fastest growing digital marketing firms in Australia. Clients now came looking for him, not the other way around. But Ethan wasn't satisfied with local success. Deep inside, he still carried the same fire from his youth. That voice that whispered, "There's more ahead. Keep moving. Dreaming bigger." One night, as he studied his company's growth charts, Ethan thought to himself, "If my father could fish the rough seas every day for decades without giving up, surely I can take my own ship beyond this harbor." The idea of going global was terrifying. Competing on the international stage meant facing giants, firms with decades of experience plus thousands of employees and endless resources. But Ethan remembered his first cafe client, his first tiny breakthrough. He smiled. "I started small before. I can start small again." just bigger this time. The first step abroad. Ethan chose Canada for his first overseas venture. With its growing digital economy and cultural similarities, it felt like the right place to start. He traveled alone, carrying nothing but his laptop, a few saved dollars, and an unshakable determination. The beginning was tough. Meetings were canceled, emails went unanswered. Competitors dismissed him as the Aussie bloke with a small team. But Ethan's persistence cut through the noise. He worked day and night, customizing strategies for local businesses. Within months, he secured his first 2 Canadian clients. The contracts were small, but for Ethan, they were proof he could play on the global stage. Expansion and sacrifice. With Canada as his foothold, Ethan slowly expanded into the UK and later into the US. His Melbourne team grew to 25, with remote staff scattered across time zones. But global growth came at a price. Long flights stole his sleep, jet lag blurred his days. Time away from family left him lonely. There were nights in empty hotel rooms when he stared at the ceiling and wondered, is this really worth it? But every time doubt crept in, he remembered the nights he once went hungry. The times his parents sacrificed everything for him. And he whispered again, work today, and tomorrow will thank you. Recognition at last. By 33, Ethan's agency wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. He was invited to speak at international conferences. Business magazines ran his story with headlines like, "From construction sites to global success." Journalists often asked him, "What's the secret to your success?" Ethan always gave the same answer, "There's no secret, just work today, so tomorrow can thank you." Redefining success. But with all the recognition, Ethan began to notice something. Success wasn't just about numbers or global expansion. It wasn't about new offices or contracts worth millions. It was about people. The single mother on his team who could now give her kids a better future. The cafe owner who doubled his sales and hired 5 new staff. His parents, finally at peace, knowing their son had built a life of dignity. For Ethan, this was the real victory. Not money, not fame, but impact. The legacy of tomorrow. At 38, Ethan sat in his Melbourne office, no longer the small rented room with flickering lights, but a sleek glass building overlooking the Yarra River. His agency now had clients across 4 continents, with more than 100 employees proudly carrying his vision forward. But for Ethan, success was no longer about contracts or offices. It was about reflection, looking back at the path he had walked and the lessons carved into his soul. Returning to the beginning. One crisp autumn evening, Ethan drove back to Warrnambool, his hometown. The salty air of the sea, the cries of the gulls, and the familiar streets pulled his memories back like waves. He visited his old family home. His father, older now but still strong, sat on the porch. His mother, smiling softly, brought out tea. They sat together as the sun dipped low, just like they used to years ago. Ethan looked at his father and whispered, "You were right, Dad. Work today, tomorrow thanks you." Those words built my life. His father simply smiled, pride shining in his tired eyes. Planting new seeds. Ethan realized that legacy wasn't about how high you climbed, but how many people you lifted along the way. So he began mentoring young Australians, students, dreamers, and hustlers who reminded him of his younger self. He launched free workshops, teaching not just digital marketing, but resilience, discipline, and the power of consistency. He told them his story, not to boast, but to show that failure isn't the end, and ordinary beginnings can still lead to extraordinary lives. Conversations with the youth. One day, after speaking at a local university, a young student approached him and asked, "Ethan, what if I fail? What if I try and lose everything like you did in your first business?" Ethan placed a hand on the boy's shoulder and replied, "Then you'll learn faster than anyone else. Failure isn't a thief, it's a teacher. I failed, but those failures gave me the tools to win later. Don't fear the fall, fear standing still." The boy nodded, his eyes shining with hope. In that moment, Ethan saw himself again, not the man he had become, but the boy who once carried bricks and whispered to the waves, "Tomorrow will thank me." The realization of a lifetime. Ethan often thought back to the turning points of his journey. The nights of hunger, the mockery from friends, the failures that nearly crushed him, the victories that lifted him higher. And through it all, one truth stood tall. Hard work never betrays you. It always pays, just not always straight away. Tomorrow had indeed thanked him, but only because he never stopped working today. The legacy Ethan leaves standing once again on the beach at Warrnambool, staring out at the endless ocean. Ethan whispered to himself, "One day, I'll be gone, but my story will remain. And if even one person hears it and chooses not to give up, then I've done my part." The waves crashed, carrying his words into eternity. Ethan understood now. Success isn't about being remembered for what you built. It's about inspiring others to build their own tomorrows. Final lesson. Ethan's life journey leaves us with truths we can all carry forward. Work today, tomorrow will thank you. Failures are lessons, not endings. Small wins build big victories. True success is measured by the lives you impact, not the wealth you collect. Legacy is leaving behind courage, not comfort. Ethan began as a boy carrying bricks. He grew into a man carrying dreams. And finally, he became a leader carrying hope for generations to come.